Whatever design we are talking about is one thing that always remains the same – purpose. You as an artist are facing a problem and your design is the solution for that. Very simple on paper, but as usual we can overcomplicate it. Hi, my name is NAKA and there was an art event a few months ago giving me the perfect opportunity to talk about how I do my designs and give feedback on yours. Annual art event Chroma Core had an entry phase, make a character design in a week which will be referred as your cadet. That gives you a purpose to draw, but not much as an inspiration for your cadet's purpose. Let's see what we are working with here. 1. Each year's Chroma has a theme to it. This year's was Grand Prix, a large race to the finish line. Artists didn't need to follow that, but it serves as a starting point if you're a bit lost. 2. I'm not allowed to compete at Chroma Core anymore since I won last year. So, Grand Prix and disqualified. These were my main sources of inspiration to create a design that's memorable. The moment I find a purpose that satisfies these two, then I'm on track. I came to the conclusion that if I'm not racing, then I should be the one dead last, not racing but picking up the fallen cadets. A creepy Undertaker would be perfect for that. After all, he is the embodiment of falling out of the competition. You don't want to meet him on the racetrack. And as a trusty Undertaker, he needs a matching undertaking and a reliable hearse. I came up with 4 options, then I forgot to record. A day later, we are already designing the car. Normally in a character design you focus on the character, but this time around I grabbed the chance to mess with the vehicle design. Last time I drew a car it was a year ago and I kinda like doing it. It might sound weird, but characters don't necessarily need to be outstanding by themselves. Sometimes a prop, companion or other extras can tell a lot about your OC. And when we are talking about drivers, their vehicle is almost as important as themselves, sometimes even easier to identify. So, what vehicle matches an Undertaker? The hearse. I looked up hearses on Google for inspiration, but none of them matched the vibe I was looking for, so I made up this design based on the car parts I liked. Then I made it to be an off-road vehicle by the idea of Mr. Pale should be able to access the Volands no matter where they are. Fun little side effect, this ball-style structure makes the car a 5 tons of unstoppable force, making the idea of this thing behind you much more scary. After the line art I went for flat colors, basically separating things to body, mechanical parts and wheels. The most important part about it to have those in separated layers for easy access later. So it's more about masking things out for later than coloring for now, therefore precision is much more important than the actual color. Once the masking is done, it's time for shading. I start with a basic soft brush to drop the base for shadows. I'm not focusing on cast shadows, just the ambient occlusion. Then, on a new layer, I start painting drop shadows. I imagine a top-down general light source and paint black on a low opacity layer everywhere I feel it should be in dark. This technique is an easy way to bring out the car's shape. Right after that, painting light. I use a hard edge brush to make the car's surface more metallic. But I tone back those lights on the tires with a soft brush since it's a different material. Now that we have a nice foundation, it's time to have some rough background, but not just for the sake of having a background. We are actually still rendering the car. If you want to make more realistic shadows, highlights or reflections, you must have an environment to have a perspective on those. You have different reflections, contrast and general luminosity based on where we are. Once I got the rough background, now I have an idea what colors affect the car's surface. I grabbed the sky's color and started overpainting the car with it, carefully removing it from non-metallic surfaces and adding it on smaller reflective parts. At the end, quick adjustment on the layer's opacity to tone back the aggressive color. Next step, bounce light. Similar as the previous, but this light is bouncing back from the ground, so it does a few things differently. 1. It lit the car from below since it's bouncing back from the ground. 2. It's not as strong as the direct light coming from the top. 3. It has the general color of the ground. Next up, decals. Deadline Funeral Service is the name of the business, so let's make it visible. I grabbed the official Chroma Core Grand Prix logo and put it on the car in low opacity, then overpainted it. The reason why I'm doing it is consistency. It's a small detail, but if it's visually too different, it's gonna feel a bit unnatural on the picture. So just simply overpainting it with the brush, it immediately becomes visually coherent. Still feel a bit empty, so let's slap a custom Chroma Core logo on the side too. A little bit of mud on the tires, then it's time for the actual background. Nothing much happening here. Outside you might notice that the car is even more rendered. I simply forgot to record that part. I went back for the color mask and added some rust and dirt with some variation of color. If you're interested in how they look in the PSD file, you can grab it on my Patreon, link down below. Up next, our boy Mr. Pale. Weirdly enough, this simple design caused me the biggest headache. Doing the quick draft showed me that it looks better if he directly looks at the camera, and also confirmed something that I was a bit worried about. He doesn't feel like an adult Undertaker, but more like an edgy teenager in a school uniform. My first thought was that if I fix the face, that fully solves the problem. It not only didn't, but also let me spiral into redrawing his face over and over again, meeting Rick, Kehtahsey, and a face that I definitely saw somewhere but I don't remember where. What if I don't draw a face at all? A little bit of more messing around, and finally I got the face. I went for those empty dead fish eyes with a smug smile. Now that the face is okay, let's have a quick retake on his suit. Right now it feels more like a high school uniform than something that an Undertaker would wear. A Russian collar shirt was my original idea, but that reminds me of those priest collar things, so I went for those instead. A quick coloring, hold on, we have Kehtahsey again, okay, better. Some similar shading that I used on the car for consistency in style, and we are almost done. The top part of the car feels a bit empty, and what else would you put on top of a hearse than a coffin? I know that normally should be inside the car, but we need to use every space if we don't want to turn back and forth for each fallen cadet. So yeah, this is my thought process when I'm making a design. Gladly, Mr. Pale was well received and liked by many, but this event wasn't about me. It was about 2156 entries, 384 of them being selected as outstanding designs, but only 52 spots to compete in the main competition of Chroma Core. 7 made it to the end to celebrate the final 2 winners. Even against this brutal odds, some of you managed to make it. Yep, this is an early shout out to my Patreons, cause these people not just helping me keep the channel running, but also dip their toes into this competition. So everyone say thanks to them, and you guys should say thanks to Envyfish who brought up the idea. What if you review our entries? Let's do exactly that. Starting with Kehtahsey? A simple but very effective way of thinking. Let's make an unconventional cowboy. What if it's a girl? Still too simple. What if I change the horse? What other animals fits the American Western? The bald eagle. Simple but effective. One thing that actually surprised me was how well you use storytelling without a single word. Arthur is a playful, might be even a bit respectful companion, but he is there in need. You could just drop some boring text here and there, but those 2 illustrations speak volumes. Great job. Also, on the pro side, I need to mention the consistent colors with this white, yellow, brownish theme, broken with blue for Morrigan. You even adjusted the chroma logo for that, deserves a cookie. And last but not least, you did 2 things that made me smile. One, you probably showed your design to someone who mixed Morrigan and Arthur, so I imagine you only made the chibi version to make it clear. And there is another way to do it, I'll show it soon. 2, you probably included the tank top Arthur to push your design closer to Chroma Core. It's kinda unnecessary, there is already a saddle, so it's clear that they are gonna race together at the Grand Prix. So here is the retake. Remove the chibi but color-coded the names like you did with the characters, blue for Morrigan, brown for Arthur. You are probably aware of artists looking up references for ideas in anatomy. What you can also do is looking up references to see what view angle is the best for your design. Birds are kinda weird from the front, so I turned Arthur to give him a more favorable angle. Even if I gave you the cookie for the Chroma Core logo, you can push that further as well by imbuing it into your design. Imagine where a logo or a text would go normally and just put the Chroma Core logo there. Another rule of thumb is your thumb. Imagine your piece being printed holding in your hand. You should leave edges free of information where your thumb would hide it. This framing makes it visually more pleasant. Your general colors are nice, but you can include Morrigan's blue to make the page more interesting. Also, Morrigan is only blue and gold, so what if we borrow some brown from Arthur to make them match even more? Next patient, Putz. Niva the Gardener Witch. It's insane how consistently you pushed everything towards gardening and witchcraft. A witch hat made out of straw, magical gardener gloves, her gestures suggest a personality that is uncomfortable around humans, fitting for both teams, a living watering can and a plant-based companion, both magical and garden themed at the same time. Even your presentation and art direction reminds me of potion craft that amplifies this cozy magical vibe. Your extra pages provide more context and stay consistent in style. Beautiful job. Also, your mirror made me giggle. You don't need an excuse to show your character from the front and the back, and the mirror doesn't solve anything outside of that. But I kinda like it. So, let's put the mirror in perspective. Some little overlapping is okay, we are not hiding any important info. Made her name bigger, it's more important than her title. Also reduced the amount of colors on Niva, changing her dress to a darker desaturated blue to contrast her red hair, orange top and yellow straw hat. With that I also removed the flower petal skirt part to simplify her a bit. It feels like the material and shape doesn't really work well together with the rest of the design, but it's my personal preference, so feel free to judge my decision. Also, the thorns on the boots changed to vines a bit more lively and a quick fix on anatomy. Kino is a good concept, but shape-wise we can push them further by looking up some watering can references. Lampy can be sleepy or absolutely lost when not being burrowed in the comfy ground, your choice. Up next, Niko. Doubling down on a simple design is a perfectly viable option. Limited color palette, strong shapes on a clear concept is all you need. Extra animation for measure, customizing the chroma core logo and not forgetting to sign your piece are just bonuses on top of all of that. But simplification comes at a cost. The less you give to the viewer, the more time you give them to look at every single detail. Therefore, you need to pay even more attention when you're making your decisions. For example, you have a black character on a black background, making it hard to read. The rendering on the crown is not consistent with his design, since it's rendered with more shades of red, and this font did you dirty. I know choosing the right typo is an absolute miserable pain in the ass, so that's why I got fed up back then and made my own. It's actually not that hard if you use some guidelines and treat letters as shapes like you normally do by drawing. So this is how it looks. Aggressive contrast between background and your cadet, aggressive blocky text on flames to push the brutal design further, and the crown being simplified down to fit his style. Barely few changes if you really think about it. If you're interested in simplifying things down this hard, I highly suggest studying contrast-related design principles. Next, Dixie came up with a samurai woman? Samures? In general, I'm not very familiar with traditional wear from this era in Japanese culture, but I like the concept of the hardened leather armor under her thin white coat. There are some patterns suggesting a clan or family, and the flower in her hair is a good touch of color. Straightforward, grounded design with a lot of potentials. My suggestion here is to find some returning pattern. The flower in her hair can be a good starting point. You can create a logo out of it that can return on her coat and as a carving on her armor. So you don't need to come up with a new design each time and have a consistent design throughout her gear. The other thing is a different pose with an intentional camera angle. That alone gives her a more confident look, suggesting her position in the clan maybe as a leader. Since the flower petals are the main motif here, it gives her a majestic and feminine look. The Sword Empress. By simplifying the colors a bit, giving some colors to the ground and being a bit bolder with the smoke, you can have a very striking presentation. Petals in the wind and on her sword for extra details. Summary: if you think about her name and background, you can add a lot of personal details to your OC. You can use the same approach to make her sinister, barbaric, stealthy or whatever else comes to your mind. Next, JoeRobbo with a cool logo. A clear presentation shows me where to look at as a viewer. He is a character, this is his name. I especially like that you included his real name as a sign. On the character design, my initial thought is that he's a soldier visually influenced by music. Or at least the guitar-like weapon, the cool Walkman and the channel mixer on his chest suggest me to think that way. Plus point for the title and the customized chroma logo. Let's see where we can push the design. In terms of anatomy, I scaled up his head and elongated his face a bit under the mask. I swapped the mixer vest from his chest to a guitar amp on his back and connected the tape to it. I toned back the synth logo a bit. There are a lot of good ideas there, but they are in a chaotic fight for attention. Simplified the clothes folds, cause originally they were squiggled a bit too much. The general aim was to create a clear look. To be fair, I like the separated changes I made, but not the overall result. Over simplification, I lost the original soldier vibe you had. He became much more scrawny, now that looks like a sweatpants. The weapon became a sniper, but no longer feels like a guitar. So let's try again. Workout check, military gear check, guitar check, vest check. Also, let's include the weapon separately and twist the chroma logo to our taste. Next. I love the idea of a multifunctional prop, especially how you explained it with only illustrations. Colors are consistent and the shapes are good in general. Let's see what we can do here. The main pose and the second pose don't really do anything, so let's combine them. Outside of that, I gave her a neck, an extra finger and made her exhaust pipe more angular, inspired by modern sport bikes. Also, you already have a chroma logo, no need for two. And finally, I leave it up to you to decide. Next. Petra, hero of the apocalypse. A striking pose with confident line art, storytelling through illustration, skill for digital rendering, good gear details on her design. You actually have it all. It just kinda spread it out. My advice to you, find a way to combine all of those. I know it's easier said than done, but for example, you can sketch on paper, then scan it or make a photo of it with your phone. Load the picture to your drawing software and do the rendering like you did here. Generally, I believe you are on the right track, already build up all the skills you need, so it's time to assemble them. Next. Accentor, a medical unit defending citizens from space pirates. You created a problem and your design is the solution for that. Great job. I love your color choices. White with a hint of red is what we are globally familiar with when it comes to medical stuff, and green is also a color that we are familiar with as nature and healing. The turnaround shows where the plant canister is connected to, and the little illustration on the side visually explains his kind nature. By the way, a nice line work. Now let's see what to look out for in the future. I will spend a little bit more time with his blade. Currently it looks like it's inspired by a syringe and functions as a blade and a shield at the same time, but it kinda does none of those effectively. Good concept, but it makes him look way too menacing, and I'm not sure that he can do anything with it other than putting you out of misery in the most miserable way. Outside of that, leave some space at the edges of the canvas, and the grey on grey works against you. Bump up the contrast. As you see, I made some changes, mostly focusing on how does he help and how to pop the presentation a bit more. 1. The plant canister has an extra mask for patients. 2. The turnaround and the extra illustration combined to a back view illustration describing how he helps. 3. More contrast on the character and more color in the background. 4. A toned back chroma logo. 5. A new mask that I ended up with after experimenting. You can change it back if you want, it was just a small exploration. 6. The misery blade is gone, but I didn't include a solution, so it's up to you. Now that I'm writing the script, what if you make a large blocky shield that has small shelves for medical supplies on the inside? Next, a perfect example how to represent a mysterious character. We don't need to show and explain every single detail. In this case, it's part of the charm. I love the vibe you set up here, even the name fits perfectly, and I adore this strict color palette. There is only one way to improve it that I can think of. Just paint the whole damn thing. You can push it a bit further with a prop and some return of the golden color, and that's it. If it's intimidating, just go for a portrait, and once you're done, just stretch the bottom part of the canvas with a crop tool and add the rest of the body later. Next. Marian Kala conceptually is probably one of the strongest design out of the bunch. The living squid witch hat with fountain pen nibs as a tentacle seems a bit too much at once, but it works thanks to that they are living on Mari's head while interacting with her books. The only reason that this design didn't make it to standouts is probably due to how we see them. The colors feels a bit muddy and the shapes are fighting each other for attention to a point where viewers might miss important details like the nib tentacles or drawing ink out from the book. Simplifying down minor details can bring more attention to the important bits. In general, whenever you find your art a bit chaotic, look for hierarchy, contrast where it's needed and toning it back on secondary details. This stands for colors, this stands for shapes. Also, fonts are part of the design, give them the time that they deserve. Next. First thing first, congrats Getget? I'm gonna go with Gegum for making it into the entry standouts, aka making it to the top 400. Very good presentation, super strong expression, awesome extra illustration, and probably the best hat in chroma history. Yeah, I'm not kidding, that hat and the matching smug expression was probably one of the main reasons why you were selected. So what can we do for improvement? For cowl, by simplifying the design a bit, now you have an extra pop of red color returning into the belt area. I don't really understand that micro bikini thing, maybe that's on me, but the brown top is enough I guess. The hexagon shapes are interesting, what if we make all the pockets like that? A little bit of fix on the sword and the stock of the gun and we are roughly done. For the bird, a bit more consistent line work, returning colors on the tail feather and a bit more travel ready saddle, you know, like with extra details. For the sketch, finish it. It's your money shot for storytelling. For composition, variety in size. Include the companion in the title. Remove all unnecessary chroma logos, you have way too much. And finally, give a bit more time to your texts. As you see, the character design in my version is still sketchy, so think about it as a result of a general direction rather than a final product. Next. Another entry standout, Nani by Soco. Keep doing chroma, I believe now it's just a matter of time and luck for you to become a cadet, because this is a fucking good design. Like, this is the character that I can easily imagine in Overwatch as a new favorite by players. All the fun details are justified by functions, cool poses showing her from every angle, and everything is coherent from shapes and colors to composition and consistency in quality. The small thing that I might change on your first page is to pick a stronger pose as the main one, like this or this. Her elbow is a bit in an awkward position here, try to replicate yourself, your arm doesn't really bend this way. The other thing is to revisit the background to make her pop a bit more. Although the larger improvement you can make is on your second page. At Chroma, there are people text dumping info about their codecs that takes time to get through as a judge. So your best shot to get them into details is making yours in appetizing bite-sized chunks. Of course, you already did that by spacing them out, but what if we push this concept further? This is the same amount of info you have, but shortened in separated boxes pointing to the related parts, small blueprint illustrations and an extra to make the viewer more curious. I asked Cynics what made him select the codecs that he selected. Of course, there are a lot of reasons, but he summarized it better than I could. In a universal sense, they all went very unique and distinct with the presentation, which is enough to get the brain stopped when scrolling through 2000 entries. That always sells some level of confidence, enough to get you to slow down and start eating away the details. If the details also feel like a reward for having stopped, then it really reaches a higher level of appreciation. There is a lot of entries that have visual stopping power, but no payoff for making you examine the details. There is also entries that have great details, but you miss out on them because they didn't have the stopping power. They also did a good job on taking somewhat familiar visuals and twisting them just enough to bring us into less familiar territories. So, 3 of you made it into the main competition. Gegum 17th place, 1 win of the day and 2 top place finish. I mean, it's not surprising, sick design, sick details. But you asked for feedback, so here we go. Even your main illustration had the stopping power, even your design and details were rewarding. Presentation is a topic where you have some room to min-max. Let's focus on your page. Left side slaps, although I would rather go with the horse design than the bike, cause it feels stronger to me, personal opinion. But on the right side, like that you made a custom font for the name, but it's much less detailed, crammed to the edge and blends into the background. This thing here is probably the second most important thing on your page after the illustration, so give it a bit more love and time. The font choice for the body text is actually matching the vibe, but it's very hard to read. Usually detailed fonts are made for titles because they are exhausting to read, which is not a problem if you only have a few words, but this is not a few words. Also, the Chroma logo doesn't match the vibe at all, probably that's why you toned it back. This is the result just by addressing these small things. But the thing is, you got selected. Everything I mentioned are unnecessary, cause you can't get more selected. By the way, quick note, everything here is a shade of green without any accent color. Normally it's a no-no, but your piece actually works thanks to the strong contrast in saturation and luminosity with a subtle yellow hue shift toward lights. Your design is a great example for effectively playing against a design principle. It's super hard, good job. Mr. Green, 2nd place, 8 win of the days, which is the highest number shared with the 2 winners, and 20 top place finishes, which is, I believe, is an all-time record. This guy is the definition of consistent high-quality art without a break. Good luck competing against him next year. But we are here to critique, so let's have it rolling. Trust me, there is not much to work on. You mentioned that Camellia's armor and clothes are made out of her hair. For the shoulder pads and the clothes it's visible, but the helmet is a different story. So we will address that. Leon can change his size, that's clear. The 2 illustrations that you used here are perfect to show all of those details, good job on that. The font choice for the name is nice, but I have no clue what this 770 underdog means, probably nor Cynics. Normally we want to use some free space towards the edges on the canvas, you did the opposite of that, nice way to make her literally pop off the canvas. Everyone, basic design principles can be broken if you have a good reason to do so, same as Gegum's color choices. Let's see the changes. A bit of extra contrast, maybe I overdone it, but there was a room for it for sure. Your text was a bit shy, overlap is okay, don't need to be afraid of that. You can also customize it a bit as well. Give some minimal texture to Leon, make his skin feel different, and finally and most importantly, unify her hair gear and her hair. I just dropped the gradient map on it, you can render it properly, and I added hair strains here and there that you can also push further with interlaced hair strains unifying to weave patterns on the armor like carbon fiber or any fabric. If you want to push it even further, you can also do the same with a more contrasty hair color. It's just an example, but you probably get the point. And finally, Voland, 1st place. 8 win of the days, 18 top finishes, sharing his victory with Funky Pepe at Chromacore 2025's Grand Prix. You didn't ask for feedback, so I'm only here to say, great work. Well played, see you at All Stars in 2030.